The Ray Hanania Show is brought to you by the U.S. Arab Radio Network and sponsored by Arab News Newspaper, the Middle East's leading English language publication, with print and online editions in Saudi Arabia, Dubai, France, Japan, Pakistan, England, and the United States. Listen to live radio every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern in Detroit, Washington, D.C., New York, and Ontario, Canada. Or watch the live broadcast on Facebook.com/Arab News. The Ray Hanania Show is rebroadcast in Chicago at 12 noon on Thursday. For more information on the radio stations, live Facebook broadcast, and podcasts, visit ArabNews.com. And now, here's your host, columnist and U.S. Special Correspondent for Arab News, Ray Hanania. ArabNews.com, bringing you breaking news from across the Middle East and the latest on Arabs in America. Get inside the latest headlines with expert analysis and insights at ArabNews.com. Join over 5 million Facebook fans and over 10 million monthly readers. ArabNews.com.
Testing 1 2 3.
It matters to you.
Testing 1 2 3. Can you hear? Can you hear?
Huwaida Araf is running for Congress in the new 10th district, which includes cities where the Arab Chaldean presence is strong. A Christian Arab from Palestine, Huwaida is a civil rights attorney and a longtime champion of rights for all people, including Arabs and Chaldeans, here in the United States and around the world. Visit HuwaidaForCongress.com to get more information on her candidacy and why she needs your support in the upcoming August primary. Give your vote a voice and help elect a representative of and an advocate for our communities. Vote for Huwaida Araf on August 2nd or by absentee ballot.
All right. Welcome to the radio show. Sorry about that little start. Technology, always gets in the way of everything. It is Wednesday, July 20th, 22. We're broadcasting live in Detroit, Washington, D.C., and tomorrow we'll be broadcasting in Chicago on 1080 AM radio. Today we're going to focus on what I consider the outrageous and excessive lengths that Israel supporters through AIPAC go through to control the vote in American elections. It's unbelievable. We have two segments today. In the first segment, we're going to talk with Huwaida Araf on her candidacy in Michigan's 10th district and the attacks that are coming from the pro-Israel and AIPAC extremists who are trying to control America's elections. And what I have to say about Huwaida is she's smart. She's always right. I don't think I've ever, we may have disagreed on some minor stuff, but you are talking about all the issues in Michigan's 10th district that the people care about. And groups like AIPAC are trying to focus on one issue to hurt you. Later in segment 2, we're going to talk with Dale Sprusansky. He's the assistant editor at the Washington Report on Middle East Affairs. And we're going to talk and focus on AIPAC. They spent more than $6 million and they defeated the reelection of Donna F. Edwards in Maryland's 11th district simply because she didn't agree with all of the votes that they wanted. Huwaida, welcome to the program. And again, I apologize for the little burp in our start there.
That's quite all right. Thank you for having me, Ray. It's good to be with you.
Tell us about yourself. I love on your website that you identify yourself in so many ways and then say, and a mom. I think that mom resonates with voters, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I mean, and for many people who are parents, it's the most important job that they have. So I definitely want to put that out there. I'm a mom of 2 elementary age school children, a 7-year-old girl and a 9-year-old boy. I am also a longtime human rights activist and I'm a civil rights attorney. I was born and raised in Southeast Michigan. My parents came to this country when my mom was 9 months pregnant with me, and I'm the oldest of 5 children now. And they left Palestine. And as you and probably most of your listeners know, right, the situation in Palestine is horrific. It's probably worse today than it was when my parents immigrated, but they left the violence, the occupation, the complete lack of freedom and opportunity in order to give their children a chance at freedom and opportunity. They came to the United States, and I am so grateful that I got what my parents came here for. But I look around, not only around me in Michigan and in the 10th district, but also around the world, and see that so many people don't have that, are denied just basic rights. And so constantly looking about how to give back. That's why I got into human rights organizing, and I became a human rights attorney and also did civil rights, because everybody deserves freedom, equal rights, safety and security. And so many don't have it as a result of deliberate policy.
And human rights is a principle. It's not like it's just human rights for one people. It's human rights for everybody across the board. Correct?
Yes, absolutely. And I, years ago, after I graduated from college, I went over to Palestine to work at the time for a conflict resolution program. But you can't be talking peace and conflict resolution when the situation on the ground is when inequality, when oppression is entrenched. And so I co-founded what's called the International Solidarity Movement to basically unite people all over the world to fight government oppression and to stand with people who are fighting for their human rights and their dignity and their freedom. And when people ask me about that in my campaign here in Michigan today, it resonates that, that Palestine might be halfway across the world, but everybody everywhere deserves basic rights, and the right to live in freedom and with dignity is something that everyone understands. So I say, yes, what's happening here in Michigan is not that different. I mean, it's different from what I saw in Palestine, and people's homes aren't being razed over their heads, or soldiers aren't grabbing kids from their beds in the middle of the night, but people's rights are being violated here. When you as a parent have to decide between heating your home and putting food on the table, or when you have to send your kids to school and not know if they're going to come back safely to you, your rights are violated. You're not living free. And again, this is all about policy that's keeping people down, that's denying people their rights.
And I understand that, of course, AIPAC, which is this powerful lobbying arm that pretends like, they're interested in American interests, but they have one goal, and that's to destroy anybody who questions a foreign government named Israel. Israel is not an American citizen. Israel is a foreign country. And it's almost like we have to prove that to people. But what I like about your campaign, because I've been looking at it very carefully, and what I like about another candidate who ran and won here in Illinois, Abdel Nasser Rashid, he's Palestinian, you're Palestinian. Yes, people are bringing up that issue, but almost 99% of what you talk about is what's needed in the district. He didn't run out there. He didn't wear Palestine on his shoulder. I know he's Palestinian. I know you're Palestinian. But it always comes down to voters. What are you going to do for us? And I think you've done a good job of identifying the issues of what you're going to do for those voters. Tell us, what are some of those issues that AIPAC is totally ignoring? They want everybody to think it's one issue, but you're out there fighting for a lot of issues that resonate with voters.
Yes, absolutely. I'm fighting to make this government and economy work for working people. We have a structure right now, and it's largely due to the influence of big money in politics. And AIPAC obviously falls into that. They, with their millions of dollars, try to buy politicians. And that's why we see a lot of members of Congress, unfortunately, blindly voting in support of Israel. And I'm talking to voters about the need to get big money out of politics so that we can make this government and economy work for them. When we're talking about why people don't have health care, why 40% of Americans newly diagnosed with cancer lose their entire life savings within 2 years because they can't pay for the treatment that they need, or you have an illness or an accident and then you're worried about bankruptcy. Why we can't guarantee healthcare? That you're talking about big insurance companies and the influence of their money in politics. Why we are so overcharged for prescription drugs, life-saving drugs. That's, you have the pharmaceutical company. Why we are not cleaning up our air and water. You're talking about the fossil fuel and the coal companies. So people feel very much and are very cynical, unfortunately, about the elections. It's, who are these people representing? Are they representing us, or are they representing those buying them or writing them the big checks? And almost everybody that I've spoken to, from Democrat to Republican, agrees that the influence of big money in politics is destroying our democracy. It's making our representatives not work for us. And they're supporting my message that I'm going to stand up to this because we have to have representatives legislating for the benefit of the people to uplift the working class, expand the middle class. Right now, we have a system that only works for the billionaire class and the well-connected few.
And let's explain big money, because people sometimes they think it's money, but what we're really talking about are, you want to bring health care to people who need it. The insurance industry, the health industry funds millions to prevent that from happening because they don't want their losses. They don't want to have to pay more to provide services. The pharmacy industry, lobbyists like Israel's AIPAC, they don't want Americans to see the truth. It's not, like you said, I think it's so important that people understand that they're not out there to defend the voters. They're out there to protect their interests, which are outside of the district. You're the only voice fighting for that right to defend those voters. Healthcare, the pharmacies, jobs, all that stuff. What do you hear from people in response to this ugly campaign that I have seen AIPAC and their supporters fund against you? It's horrible.
It is. I don't know. They can, so far, let me say, I have been ignoring their vitriol and their lies. I don't want to give them any more attention and they don't deserve any attention, again, because it's all based on lies. And when I'm at voters' doors, they're talking to me about the things that concern them, and so far have not heard or seen any of AIPAC or the staunch pro-Israel activists' lies. Now, that might change if I pass the primary and AIPAC starts investing more money in running their lies on television. So far, there haven't been any television commercials against me, and that's the easiest way to reach a lot of voters. Mostly it's been on social media and some print stuff. But I've just been focusing not on their vitriol and their lies, but on what I'm listening to voters and what they need. And
what are voters telling you?
Obviously, the economy is really hurting people, and I obviously sympathize with that. And it's not that there's a quick fix, but also want people to realize there's a lot of price gouging going on, and we have a lot of representatives not voting to stop this price gouging because those who are running the companies that are that are overpricing and gouging consumers are the ones that are also paying off our elected representatives. You have people very concerned about guns in our society, and there you're looking at the gun manufacturers, the gun lobby that has for so long prevented any kind of meaningful legislation on gun safety in our society. This is impacting people every single day. And then I'm talking to them about my plans to bring manufacturing home, to address a lot of the supply chain issues. My district specifically is a manufacturing district. And for example, my father was a UAW GM auto worker, and the plant that he worked at for decades to support our family shut down, jobs going overseas. We need to bring that back. But these are some of the issues. Schools also is another one that I hear a lot about. Right now, unfortunately, the quality of the education that our children gets depends on where they live. A city in my district, they're shutting down one of the last elementary schools in there because they don't have the funding. And what happens then is you have some people that are able to send their kids to private schools, but so many people that are suffering from the lack of quality education. So all of these issues are what people are concerned about here. And if my work on Palestine comes up, I'm proud to talk about the work in the sense that, yes, I have committed my life to fighting for people's human rights because everybody deserves human rights and dignity. And do you know that $4 billion of your tax money goes to support Israel human rights abuses every single year? That outrages people.
And when you go out there, obviously, you are in a, I think it's like, isn't it a 50-50 district, Republican and Democratic? So you have a good shot at winning this election. And I think when people realize that, maybe they're going to open up more and support you. I know there's a big audience of Chaldean Christians out there. You're a Christian yourself, correct?
Yes.
And I'm Christian. And obviously, I don't see any difference. I'm Christian by religion, but Muslim by culture, I always tell everybody, because we work together all the time. But Christian Arabs and Chaldeans and Middle East people, they need to step up and support you because the alternative is horrible. The alternative to you in that district would be terrible.
Yes. So we have running as well, first, let me address the issue about the district. It is a very important district and one that will be heavily focused on after the primary. In the primary, it hasn't gotten the attention it deserves. But with the redistricting, we are now the only district in Michigan that is considered a swing district. So Michigan now has 13 congressional seats. 6 of them are expected to go Republican. 6 of them are expected to go Democrat. Michigan's 10th congressional district is a 50-50 seat, so it could go either way. The Republican that we have running is John James, who ran for Senate twice, so he's very well funded. He's endorsed by Trump, but he doesn't even live in our district. So he's trying to buy the people of this district with his millions. But before I get to John James, I do have a primary that it remains to be seen. Hopefully I will come out on top, but it is an uphill climb. Because one of the people I'm running against, he's not an incumbent, but he has been around Macomb County specifically for the last 5 decades. And so there's a lot of name recognition. And although there are a lot of people at the doors and elsewhere that tell me we need change, and I am a big supporter of that, I think that if we keep electing the same kind of politicians, then nothing's ever going to change. So we do need change, but name recognition sometimes is the name of the game. So I have been trying to motivate more people to support. And as you said, our community has been slow to come on and support for a variety of reasons, unfortunately. So it's been a struggle getting the resources to be able to do the voter outreach. But one of the things that has been very interesting is we ran a poll a couple of months ago, and that poll showed that if the election was today and voters were just going on name, this opponent that I have would win by double digits. He would beat me and everybody else.
Because his name recognition has been out there for a long time.
Yes, because everybody knows his name. But then we read everybody's biographies and their issues. And then I move ahead slightly of this person. And then we read the voters' positives and negatives about everyone. And for me, I included negatives like all of the horrible things that AIPAC and the like throw at me, like I am anti-Semitic or I am a terrorist supporter, all of these lies just because they'd probably hear them. And at the end of the poll, when we repolled everyone, I actually beat this guy, the considered front runner who has the name recognition. I beat him by 11 points. That shows you that my message resonates with people if they hear it, if we can reach them. And the attacks on me for my Palestine work don't lose me very much support, which is great because of this district. And I'll let you go, and then I'll tell you another thing.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, because this district, and specifically the Macomb County part of it, is considered like a bellwether as far as American politics goes. And you always have pundits talking about how Macomb County votes, because it really is, it's traditionally the home of the Reagan Democrats. You have a lot of blue collar, working class, union type voters here, and that's middle America. If these voters are not turned off by my Palestine work, and in fact, see that from our poll as a reason to support me, that is positive for the movement for Palestinian rights and for justice really around the world, which is something we all need. But a question that we asked them later, towards the end of the poll, we said, Huwaida would fight to end aid to Israel for their human rights abuses and their war crimes. Do you consider this a strong reason to support her, a somewhat strong reason to support her, or not a reason to support her at all? 66% considered this a reason or a very strong reason to support me. Only 27% said it's not really a reason to support me. That's
phenomenal. Now, it looked like, and again, I've never really gotten into the grass of the elections and the districts in Dearborn and Detroit, although I had a lot of relatives that live in Dearborn and Detroit. But it looked like they divided the Arab community a little bit when they redrew these congressional districts. You're in a new district, correct? Just north of Detroit?
Yes, I am. My district starts right north of Detroit, yes.
And it's not really an quote unquote Arab district the way some people would try to characterize it, like using it in a negative way. It does have a strong Arab American and Muslim population, but isn't the majority non-Arab and non-Muslim?
Well, it's hard to tell because Arabs don't have their own box on the census, right? So it
Exactly.
is a 78% white district, but we are white according to the district, to the census. But there is very strong Arab presence here. Arabic has become now, according to a recent article that I've seen, the second most common language spoken after English in the house. And we have at least one of the cities here, almost a third of the population is Chaldean. So from Chaldean and Arabs make up a sizable a portion of this district, not like Dearborn but it could get there. And we're definitely expanding when it comes to sharing the culture. And we have a lot more, Mediterranean places popping up. But one thing that I see and I talk about a lot is, then why isn't anyone talking about the power of the Arab or Middle Eastern vote? Every election cycle, we hear about the power of the African American vote and the Jewish vote and the Latino vote. At least in Michigan, let us give us some consideration. Let us make them give us some consideration by showing that we get out there and we vote. And that's been the struggle with our, part of the struggle with this race, at least, is knowing that there are a lot of Arabs and Chaldeans in this district, but they might not get out and vote, is something that we really have to work on.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping Chaldeans are going to be listening, because they really need to get out there and support you. Because, I know race plays a difference. I'm a Reagan Democrat, and basically I'm a Democrat. I'm not all the way to the left, but I'm kind of in the center. I like to think of myself as a moderate. We've lost those terms. You're either far right or far left these days. And I'm sure they've said terrible things about you. Tell us about how would you describe yourself in terms of your views? Some people are afraid of you because they think, oh, you're going to be really far out there on the left. The word progressive isn't a scary word. It's a good word. It's been defined by the critics badly, but it's not a bad word.
Exactly. But, even more than that, I feel that our country has become so hyper polarized that it's so easy to stick a label on someone and then just distance yourself as like, that's not me. You're too far this way, too far that way. My core is about protecting people's rights and make sure that the government and economy is working for most people. And if that means fighting the big corporations to make sure that, they're not getting the tax breaks while average people are suffering, and making sure that people have health care, making the corporations, the fossil fuel industry clean our air and water. Is that radical to want people to be able to actually live a dignified life? That's what my life has been about, fighting for these rights. And that's what I'd carry to Congress with me. As I frequently say, I've spent years fighting in the streets and fighting in the courtroom. But if we're not fighting also at the ballot box to send people to legislatures that care about protecting us and our rights, then we're not fighting hard enough.
And when I sit and talk to some neighbors, they might be a little more conservative than me. They may be a little more liberal than me, but, wanting lower taxes is not a political position. We all want lower taxes. Wanting better health care is not a party. Wanting human rights is not about, being whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. And those are the issues that I think you've really addressed. And you need money, though, correct? How do you get your message out? Direct mail, right? Radio ads, and hopefully television. I think when you win this, you are going to face a big challenge from the far right and AIPAC, because I think they're hoping to take you out in this election is August 2nd, the Democratic primary. But I think you're going to do well. And I'm hopeful you will, because we need your voice there.
Thank you. I hope so. And we are working hard. I most likely won't be able to get on television because that does cost a lot of money. And it's, we haven't raised the millions that other campaigns.
The Arab community, the Arab community is one of the wealthiest communities in the United States. I pull my hair out in journalism, wondering why we aren't equal to the task. We're like the Jewish community. And by the way, you do have a lot of support from Jewish Americans, right?
I
J
do.
Street?
Not J Street specifically. They're not opposed to me at all, but Jewish Voice for Peace Action endorsed me.
Phenomenal group, right?
Yeah, they do really great work. Obviously promoting justice for Palestine, but also here when we're talking about domestic issues, and a lot of individual Jewish American supporters that aren't tied to any group, because I think my message is universal, and those that aren't blindly pro-Israel can see that. But back to your point about our community and investing in political candidates, it is something that we do need to work on. We're starting to a little bit, but we still have so much work to do in terms of pushing our community more. We're very generous when it comes to doing humanitarian work. But one thing that I say is, if you're not doing the work to change the political situation that leaves people in need of humanitarian aid, whether it is locally or overseas, whether it's donating to Yemen or Palestine or Syria or any of that stuff, then we're not doing enough, because people, no matter where they are, don't want to live on humanitarian aid. They want policies that will allow them to live a dignified life. So yes, let's continue to do the charitable work that our religion and our morality calls us to do, but let's also invest some of that in electing people, helping to elect people that will enact better policies. And so I definitely invite your listeners to find out how to get involved with my campaign, huwaida4congress.com. I can also leave a phone number. They can certainly donate. We need it, but also volunteering to just try to reach more people in these final days before Election Day on August 2nd.
And Huwaida for Congress with the number 4, correct?
No,
Huwaida?
F-O-R.
F-O-R. So it's Huwaida, F-O-R, Congress. Huwaida4congress.com.
.com. And the number they can call is 248-987-0871. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I hope a lot of the Chaldean listeners who listen to this show, and I'm not Chaldean, I happen to be Christian from Bethlehem and Jerusalem. Probably your family and mine were neighbors at one point. Who knows? But I hope the Chaldean community sees you for what you really are, about issues and their interests. And I hope they step up to the plate and support you. I'd like to see that. I think it would be good for them to do that. I
agree wholeheartedly. Let me just give that number one more time, because I think I messed it up, even though it's my cell number. I messed it up.
That's all right.
It's 248-987-8701. So 248-987-8701. And yes, with regard to the Chaldean community, and Arab American community as a whole, I know that we are successful in business and in many different areas of life, but we are not represented in politics. We need more of our voices there in order to be more integrated into this society, in order to have people that understand our issues, that can help fight for our issues. And there's this misconception that, Republicans are better for business. I am a supporter of small businesses that many Chaldeans and Arab Americans have here, a big proponent of not only incentivizing small businesses, and especially when we're talking about minority communities starting small businesses, but also in leveling the playing field, because we have so many mega corporations here and monopolies that are squeezing out our small businesses, and we need to fight that, and I will.
All right, Huwaida RF, our guest today, running as a Democrat in the 10th District in Michigan, right on the northern part of Detroit and Dearborn, a big community of Arab Americans, Chaldeans. That election is August 2nd. It's coming up fast. Huwaida, I'd love to have you come back after that election to talk about what's going to happen in November. All right. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed, not going to jinx you, but I know there are a lot of people that are out there supporting you.
Inshallah. I hope so. Thank you. We're optimistic. We'll do this. Right. Come back. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Huwaida RF, our guest, her website is Huwaida for Congress, and it's FORHUWAIDA Congress.com. Visit her, get information on her, and reach out and help her. Thank you, Huwaida.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here at the Ray Hanania Show. And when I come back, we're going to talk with Dale Sprusansky, who's going to give us an overview of all the horrible things that AIPAC does with its money. I wonder why we don't have an Arab PAC that can go toe-to-toe with AIPAC. I would love to see that. We're going to take a break. We're going to be right back right after these messages.
ArabNews.com, bringing you breaking news from across the Middle East and the latest on Arabs in America. Get inside the latest headlines with expert analysis and insights at ArabNews.com. Join over 5 million Facebook fans and over 10 million monthly readers. ArabNews.com, news that matters to you.
Yeah, you know, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it and you really want to.
5-year-old Lila and her mom are on their way home from Grandma's, singing Lila's favorite song.
Happy and you know it, move your feet.
A few blocks away, 25-year-old Dylan is visiting friends at a small party. He finishes off his last beer,
Later, skater.
gets in his truck, and starts for home. Mom and Lila turn onto Maple Street.
If you're happy and you
So does Dylan.
If you're happy and you know it and you really want to show it. If you're happy and you know it, shout hooray. Hooray!
Every 50 minutes in the United States, someone dies in a crash involving a driver impaired by alcohol or drugs. If you're impaired and you know it, don't drive. Drive sober. A message from the Michigan Office of Highway Safety Planning.
Imagine you're on a train track. Somewhere miles away, a train is headed your way. Can't see it yet, but it's coming. Slowly but surely. If you have prediabetes or you're at risk for type 2 diabetes, you may be on the wrong track, and diabetes could be heading your way. Bit by bit, the danger is getting closer and closer. So should you stay on the track you're on now or move to make a change and reduce your risk? If you have prediabetes or you're at risk for type 2 diabetes, you may qualify for the National Diabetes Prevention Program in your local community. This one-year program could be the ongoing support you need to put you on the right track. Not only did participants lose weight, they cut their risk of type 2 diabetes in half. Ready to get on board for a healthier future? Learn more about the National Diabetes Prevention Program and what else you can do to manage and prevent diabetes at michigan.gov/diabetes. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Huwaida Araf is running for Congress in the new 10th district, which includes cities where the Arab Chaldean presence is strong. A Christian Arab from Palestine, Huwaida is a civil rights attorney and a longtime champion of rights for all people, including Arabs and Chaldeans, here in the United States and around the world. Visit HuwaidaForCongress.com to get more information on her candidacy and why she needs your support in the upcoming August primary. Give your vote a voice and help elect a representative of and an advocate for our communities. Vote for Huwaida Araf on August 2nd or by absentee ballot. The Ray Hanania Show is brought to you by the U.S. Arab Radio Network and sponsored by Arab News Newspaper, the Middle East's leading English language publication, with print and online editions in Saudi Arabia, Dubai, France, Japan, Pakistan, England, and the United States. Listen to live radio every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern in Detroit, Washington, D.C., New York, and Ontario, Canada. Or watch the live broadcast on Facebook.com/Arab News. The Ray Hanania Show is rebroadcast in Chicago at 12 noon on Thursday. For more information on the radio stations, live Facebook broadcast, and podcasts, visit ArabNews.com. And now, here's your host, columnist and U.S. Special Correspondent for Arab News, Ray Hanania.
And welcome back to the radio show. We just got through talking with Huwaida Araf, who's running in the 11th district in Michigan, the 10th district in Michigan. And I was just focused last night on the terrible, horrible loss of Donna Edwards in Maryland's 11th district. And the reason for the loss is something that we're going to talk about because her opponent, Donna Edwards' opponent, raised $1.1 million. Donna Edwards, they're both Democrats and both African-American. Donna, who served in Congress, I think 5 terms, maybe 4 or 5 terms, she raised about $1 million. But what AIPAC did, because they didn't like the fact that Donna Edwards wouldn't embrace every piece of legislation that they demanded, they poured in $6 million into that congressional race to defeat her. And they did defeat her. And when I listened to the election night victory speech of her opponent, Glenn Ivey, he never mentioned AIPAC. He talked about how he was a big follower of Martin Luther King and Robert F. Kennedy. And I'm thinking, why don't you talk about what really happened? That this election was bought and paid for by a foreign government, the followers of a foreign government who are more concerned with what the U.S. does for that foreign government than they are about the needs of local, the residents and people in local districts. So to kind of understand how powerful AIPAC is, I'm bringing in probably one of the most important authorities on AIPAC and understanding the amount of money. The Washington Report on Middle East Affairs is the source to track how much money these political action committees pour into elections. And with me is the assistant editor, Dale Sprusansky. Dale, welcome to the program today. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on. And I just took my first ever trip to Detroit last week. So it's great to be on Detroit radio. I had a great time out there.
Yeah, so we're in Detroit, Washington, D.C., and tomorrow you'll be in Chicago at 12 noon at 1080 a.m. Plus, all of this is streamed live, and, the technology can be beneficial, but at the same time, it's a pain in the butt. But listen, $6 million in one election, someone had told me that has to be one of the largest, infusion of foreign focused money in any election we've seen. Is it?
As far as we can tell, it is. And so the difference this year is, in the past, most of this money was being donated through dark money groups. So you couldn't necessarily track it. You could watch the ads and you knew someone was funding this, but you didn't know who. But late last year, AIPAC decided to kind of take its funding out in public and form a PAC, the United Democracy Project, which is one that targeted Donna Edwards. So the plus side of that is it does let us track how much they're giving. And as you said, they not just AIPAC, but pro-Israel groups, especially AIPAC, gave $6 million. And so we published our new chart in our most recent magazine of how much money every member of Congress has gotten from pro-Israel groups. And the numbers are off the charts this year because, again, there's so much that money is now in the light, and it's really giving clarity to the enormous sums. But don't get me wrong, there's still lots of dark money too. But
it's horrible. And, and this PAC money is not technically controlled by the candidates. It's thrown in like a curveball to kind of mess up an election and throw it into, turmoil so that their candidate can win, or the person usually it's against somebody. Rather, they weren't for, Glenn Ivey. They were against Donna Edwards. That's because all of their money wasn't to promote Glenn Ivey. It was to attack Donna Edwards. And she spoke about how, the lies that were said about her, just because she abstained from a vote on, something that had to do with Gaza and Israel in 2008 when she was first in Congress. They will never forget anything.
Right. And that's the thing. If you look at Donna Edwards' record, if you're pro-Palestine, it's better than most Congress people, but it's not phenomenal. She's not Rashida Tlaib. She's not Ilhan Omar. She did vote to fund Israel on multiple occasions, but she did take several things that didn't completely toe the line. And like you said, when you don't completely 100% toe the line, that's, you're bad on 1 out of 100, you're bad. And you can expect $6 million to be poured against you in a local-ish campaign.
And now when we talk about AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, they literally they coordinate an umbrella network of political action committees, because there are a lot of individual committees, and they try to say, oh, no, we don't donate directly. But yeah, you do indirectly manage the direction of where that money goes from all these different groups, and they rally their troops to raise money. And how much money have they? I know, listen, it's got to be in the hundreds of millions.
Yeah,
it's got to be a lot.
It's a lot. So what we can track thus far for the current campaign cycle is 12 million, but that is just, again, not the dark money. So, and every study shows on this issue and other issues that the dark money is multiples of what the the overt money is. So I would say hundreds of millions sounds right to me.
And we're talking about, hundreds of millions over many election cycles.
Right.
That's a lot of money. 12 million in one election cycle
which isn't over yet. Yeah.
And it isn't over. And half of the money went into one election. Half of that money went into one election that was in Maryland, and it had a profound effect. Money actually talks, doesn't it, in elections? I mean, can a candidate stand up to pro-Israel money when it comes pouring in the way it does?
They can, but it's very hard, right? And, I live in D.C., so I was able to see some of these ads because Donna Edwards' district is just across the border. And these ads focus on things like her constituent services and stuff like that. So when you're watching it, you don't even know who's paying for it. And if you get a glimmer of the little fine print at the bottom, it says paid for by United Democracy Project.
Right.
Again, no tie to Israel.
And most voters wouldn't know sometimes that the United Democracy Project was a coordinated effort directed by AIPAC and its political action committees.
So, but it just takes so much gall to act like they care, right? They're running ads saying she's bad for her constituents who have needs. And, when their real focus is on a country half a world away, they don't give a crap about her constituents.
Right.
So it's astonishing, astonishingly disingenuous.
I was going to say it's deceitful in a way because the only reason they're pouring $6 million into that Maryland 11th district was because of Donna Edwards' position on Israel. And yet they know that just going in there and fighting for Israel isn't going to win an election. So they go in there, and according to Donna Edwards, they just lied about her policies, her support of the poor, her support of healthcare, her support of lowering taxes. They just went after her, and there's like no accountability. That's the worst part about it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Unless it's something overtly slanderous, if it's just political accusations, it's, I guess, free speech, and, there's no repercussions.
Well, in your world, when you're looking at the big radar screen in the elections, because I know there's several coming up, you did this great piece. And by the way, just for listeners, just to remind them, we're talking with Dale Sprusansky, who is an assistant editor at the Washington Report on Middle East Affairs. It's WRMEA.org, I believe is your website, correct?
Yes.
And you can go there, and they did this great piece. In fact, Dale wrote it. And I was reading through it about all the big money candidacies like Tommy Tuberville in Alabama, and Jerry Carl in the 1st district. You go through every state and you talk about congressmen and senators and how much money that they're going to get. And what's the overview? I mean, what's happening out there?
Right. Yeah, it was shocking. I was having nightmares. It took a very long time to compile all this. I basically went through every new member of Congress to look kind of at their journey towards being, most of them, pro-Israel, a few exceptions. And it happens in so many ways. I mean, for a lot of them, they get approached very early in their political career when they become activists, city council members, at the most local of levels, school board members, often by groups such as the Anti-Defamation League, other groups. And they just basically slowly start, maybe you could say, cultivating them to have these pro-Israel views. And next thing you know, they're going on trips to Israel, free trips paid for. And it just quickly becomes apparent to them that being pro-Israel is good for raising money, and it's good to keep trouble off your back, right? Because not only did Donna Edwards have $6 million less, she had attack ads, so it's a double whammy of trouble when you don't have pro-Israel money behind your back. But yeah, and you see this throughout their career, just endless statements about, you think about it, why does my city council member passing a resolution supporting Israel in Operation Cast Lead? When there's outbursts of violence in Gaza. But you see these things, especially down where I'm from originally in Miami, where there's oddly amongst the Cuban politicians support for Israel, which is baffling to me. But you see this constantly, just this overwhelming just need to be pro-Israel in a way you would never feel that way to support any other country you have no affiliation to. And it takes a different tone sometimes in the South with evangelicalism, and there's more sort of heretical kind of philosophies that are more actually genuine and deep-seated, I would say. But
I don't think AIPAC is stupid. I think the people that put that organization together are very smart. They know how to focus on issues. When you have money, you can almost do anything. And a lot of candidates, like you say, some candidates may only get about $5,000 in a local race. They may get 250,000 in a congressional race, and some of the big ones, the most important positions, and we see a lot of leadership in Congress and the Senate, they could get as much as $600,000. Yeah. And that money, and you know what? You take money from somebody, they don't have to say, "I want you to support me." It's implicit, right? I give you money. You want to see that money again next election? You better be, pushing my limited agenda on one issue about a foreign country that really has nothing to do with the United States and what happens in your district. They still do that. Yep. Is there a movement out there to change? Has there been an effort to stop these PACs from pouring this kind of money, into elections like this?
I mean, there's efforts. I would say the larger effort is the effort that encompasses all political giving, which of course failed in the Supreme Court several years ago. And I think the view is, as long as political giving is allowed by the Supreme Court, there's really not much way to stop it. You can counter it. You can try and raise as much money as possible on the other side. But unfortunately, at this point, it's a Supreme Court protected way of engaging in politics, whether we like it or not. And it can't really be stopped. It can only be countered.
Can you tell us about some of the elections you think we should be watching coming up? I know Andy Levin's in Michigan. Yeah. AIPAC is after him, right? Because he's pro-peace. He's middle of the road, and they don't want that. I think it says more about AIPAC than it does about Congressman Levin.
Right. And that's a funny one, like you said, because I feel like if Andy Levin were to lose, there probably wouldn't be very many supporters of Palestine who would lose sleep at night because they don't necessarily view him as an ally. They may not view him as an enemy. But he's so middle of the road. He introduced a banal policy for a two-state solution, which many people view as perpetuating the status quo injustice. And yet again, AIPAC, which started as supporting the two-state solution, now views the two-state solution as somehow being anti-Israel, as Israel has moved further to the right. But now it's weird because now we're kind of invested in Andy Levin winning just because you don't want to see AIPAC take out even moderates, because that doesn't help your cause. He'd probably be more of a J Street kind of Zionist, so still a Zionist, but J Street Zionist. Another interesting one that happened in the past was Marie Newman lost in Illinois.
In my backyard.
Yeah. And
phenomenal person.
Right. So she lost her district, had to go up against another incumbent. I forget his name, and lost that
Sean
race.
Casten.
So,
Sean is more of a moderate, but she was more outspoken on rights for Palestinians and wanting peace in a fair way. And I know they did target her, not as much money as they put into the Donna Edwards case, campaign, to stop her. But they did play a role there. But what are some of the other ones? I mean, are we seeing these battles all over, or is it really an exception to American politics?
Yeah. So, I mean, the other big ones will be, Rashida Tlaib has a primary coming up. Same thing with Ilhan Omar. And I had a meeting with someone in Washington about a month ago, and they were very worried. They were very worried that there's just this whole wave of money amassing against them. And they told us, don't take it for granted they're going to win. They are facing serious, serious challenges. So anyone out there who supports them, I would take this person knew what they were doing. They're involved in the world of political financing and elections. And they weren't bleak, but they were very, very concerned that this can go south for them. But those are the big ones. Yeah.
Is the AIPAC money aligned with any, like the Republicans more than Democrats, or they try to spread it out all over, don't they?
They try to spread it out. Yeah. So, I mean, in a way, there's been lots of news articles lately about AIPAC donating to candidates who supported the insurrection, which is true. I kind of think it's in a way a smokescreen because we get so enamored with this idea of AIPAC being right wing and supporting the far right. But they're also donating to people on the left. And it's important to not just kind of box them into this one view. And in a way, it almost empowers them because they can do stuff in the corner that isn't as sexy to talk about when they support a moderate Democrat. It's not as outrageous. But you do see some pushback, right? Bill de Blasio, again, very pro-Israel, came out before he dropped out of the election. He said he wasn't going to take AIPAC money because of their supporting of right-wing candidates. There was I saw this famous or popular Twitter video was going around of a Jewish woman, confronting her member of Congress who's a Democrat for taking AIPAC money. And she used the fact that AIPAC is supporting insurrectionists against them. So I think it's kind of a dubious strategy on AIPAC's part. I don't see why they feel the need to align with these people. But I also don't think people who are anti-AIPAC should fixate on it too much because it kind of obscures the reality of who they are. They are not a run-of-the-mill right-wing group. They are a Zionist group who's interested in all of America supporting Israel.
Had you heard about any of the congressional candidates returning money? Because I had heard Sean Casten return the money that he got from AIPAC. I don't know if you heard that.
I haven't heard that, but it does happen very rarely, but it can happen on certain occasions. And in this heightened political environment, it wouldn't surprise me as much.
Yeah. And listen, I'm not against, and I don't think most Americans are against organizations spending money to get their agenda out. But when it's kind of deceitful, because like this Glenn Ivey that beat Donna Edwards, he's not a bad guy, and when you look at the issues, okay, he had some pretty good issues, but it wasn't about those issues. It was about one thing. And when he has $7 million to pounce on Donna Edwards, who only had 1 million, you can understand how it's going to be really tough, for Donna to win in an election like that. It's just unfair and it's wrong.
Right. And like Huwaida said, as she was on earlier, even when she goes out in her district, which has a lot of Arabs, people aren't talking to her about Palestine necessarily. They're talking about the issues, inflation, gas prices, et cetera, healthcare. And I doubt the people, even if they watch these AIPAC ads in Maryland, I don't think they were thinking like, oh yeah, I'm against Donna Edwards because of her vote on Israel. So they were, like you said, being manipulated. They were being told these things by people who had no interest in the issues that brought them to the ballot box to vote. And like you said, it's hard to get mad at her opponent, right? In this world where money is everything in politics, how could you? What is he going to do? Stand up and say, "I don't want $6 million. I don't want guaranteed victory from AIPAC." So I can't fault him. It's not necessarily the moral thing to do, but it's not the most immoral thing to do in politics, I suppose.
So I think we have the Michigan elections are in August 2nd. There'll be a whole wave of elections, I think, that date. And just to recap a little bit, who should we be keeping our eyes on? Do you think any races again that we should be watching?
I think we've hit the big two. It was Levin and Rashida Tlaib, I think, are the big ones that the lobby has its eyes on.
So, and those are the two, both in Michigan,
right? Yeah,
and it's money does have an influence. Money can take out people, but they both have been around so long, but they were kind of shoved into districts where they're fighting. I think Levin's case, where he was fighting another Democrat, right? Who was a member of Congress, Haley Stevens, I think is her name, and that's rough. I mean, like Marie Newman was forced to run against another Democrat who she probably would have gotten along with had the Democrats not tried to take her out, because that was intentional, I thought.
Well, and that's the other policy behind it. It's so much happens before you get to election day. So when Democrats sit there and look at their new map, they lose a congressional seat, they gain one, and they redraw the lines. These things come up. Well, this lady is causing trouble for us because she's pro-Palestine. So let's not secure her with a good district. Let's make her go up against someone else. Let's change his or her borders. And this is the game, right? And you see again in the Congress, who's staffing the committees, the foreign relation committees. It's all very, very pro-Israel people. The current chair of the House Foreign Relations Committee, subcommittee on the Middle East, is going to go leave to run a pro-Israel organization, think tank, after his next term is over. So it's all so much of the deck is stacked before you even get to the ballot box. But you should still vote.
So it is fair to say, though, that in a way, they don't use the money to push Israel. Right. They use the money to undermine candidates that they don't like, who they think don't support Israel enough. And they may go after specific issues that have nothing to do with Israel, because they know that those are the issues that impact voters the most.
That's right. I mean, it's very rare. Maybe in very, districts that are perceived to be very Zionist in South Florida, New York, and California, you'll see ads actually mention Israel. But for the rest of the country, 90% of the districts, no pro-Israel ad is going to mention Israel, because, again, they know the average American is going to sit there and say, why are they talking to me about Israel when I have 10,000 issues in front of me as an American? So that's their strategy, is to get you in a fury over something other than the issue they're wanting you to vote for.
I have to say I'm a great disappointment in J Street. I always felt, that they were going to stand up and kind of offer a counterbalance to this. And absolutely, there's nothing wrong with somebody being Jewish wanting to support Israel. That's absolutely their right to do it. And the fact that they spend more money on Israel than Arabs spend on Palestine or Middle Eastern countries, that's not their fault. That's our fault as an Arab community. But it does concern me that not enough money goes in to help the victims of AIPAC. I mean, when AIPAC targets you, who do you go to? Is there another PAC that's significant enough that supports like pro-Arab candidates or even pro-peace candidates who are middle of the road, who say, hey, I don't want to favor anybody. I want to favor the Americans. That's not acceptable to AIPAC.
Right. No, like the closest would be J Street, which is, like you said, Zionist light. But there's really not, I don't know if we even did it this issue. Some issues we do just for fun, divulge how much pro-Arab money was in elections. And it's always just, millions, and it's like $2,000 or $40,000, something astronomically small that we can track. So it's not being given in any way that would make any kind of difference in an election.
And you've been covering this issue for how many years now? Because I've been reading these lists.
Basically since the magazine was founded in 1982, this has been the issue that our founders, they were former diplomats who served their entire life in the region and were causing trouble in the State Department and other agencies, crying out, and they came back and they were still crying out and they couldn't retire. So they founded this magazine. And that's what we do.
And the news story out of all of this is there's no Arab money, is there? There really isn't that much Arab money out there. I mean, there is some, but it's relatively insignificant when you compare it.
And if it's being given any big sum, it's not being given under the name of Palestine or peace. It's being given, for whatever other interests. I'm Arab and I support or don't support guns or anything else. It's being given for these causes, not for Palestine.
Right, not to push an agenda. Dale, any final thoughts? We only got a couple minutes, and I know I've been leading this discussion, but anything that you wanted to mention that I didn't touch on?
I would just reinforce that bottom line, especially for people who haven't voted in their primary yet, that when you see these ads in your mail, in your newspapers, on TV, just stop to think who is pushing this, right? It may be Israel, it may be big pharma, it may be gun groups, animal agriculture, whoever, big tech. Everyone has an agenda, and everyone will use these same tactics of deception to try and get you to vote the way they want you to vote. So really research your candidates on your own terms. Go to their websites, see what they stand for, watch them speak, and make an informed decision. And don't rely on other people telling you what the candidates think, because they're telling you not what the candidates think. They're telling you how to vote for special interests.
And if you want to understand where money's coming from, especially when it may have something to do with the Middle East, go to the Washington Report on Middle East Affairs at WRMEA.org. They got a phenomenal list of all that money, which candidates get them, which elected officials get it, the total. You can go year by year. I've been to the site. I've looked at it. And I think there's another site called opensecrets.org that also looks at it. Just phenomenal. Dale, listen, thank you so much. Tell Delinda Hanley and everybody over there at Washington Report that I say hello. They're good friends of our radio show, and I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure.
All right. Our guest, Dale Sprusansky, who is the assistant editor at the Washington Report on Middle East Affairs magazine. Their website is WRMEA.org. And also, don't forget our first guest, Huwaida Arif. Her website is huwaida4congress.com. HUWAIDA 4FOR Congress.com. I want to thank both our guests for coming on and talking about all these issues. We'll be back next week on Wednesday to talk about more issues. And I hope if you're in Chicago, you're listening to our show on 1080 a.m. at 12 noon. Everybody, you have a great day. We will talk again later. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye-bye.